I think that I've given it a little bit of time for folks to join if they're joining. Um, I will start. I know I was just sharing a bit about myself, but just generally speaking, I think it's nice to give folks a little bit more insight into kind of the hiring process at Google. So I will go ahead and just like briefly give an overview of what it looks like to apply and how that works. And then I'll take all your questions. So I am, as I said, I am still like getting comfortable and familiar with the platform. So I'll pop in through this chat and then I definitely see the Q&A button there as well. So I'll toggle over to that between the two. So just briefly, like I said, the process for applying for a role at Google, um, traditionally all of our roles are available online through our careers at Google page. So that would be the first place to start. So after applying through that link, your application goes to the appropriate portal. And then I like to myth bust the misconception that our resumes are not reviewed by human beings. So every application is reviewed by an actual human being. Good to know. So make sure that your resume, like was mentioned in the panel, that your resume is indicative of your skills and your experience. And from there, if there is interest and if you are meeting the minimum qualifications for the role, you should be in touch with a recruiter. So a recruiter may reach out to have just a brief informational chat, maybe ask some questions about the role, make sure that it's a good alignment. And then from there, traditionally, again, depends on the role, but at Google, we traditionally start with an initial technical phone screen if it's a technical role. If it's not a technical role, we still start with the phone screen. So it's typically 45 minutes on the call with the person in the job function that you would be joining. So if it is a software engineering role, it would be a coding-based interview. But maybe if it's some other role, it's a 45-minute interview on program management skills, for example. um, and then from there, after the initial phone interview, if we have the signal to move forward, then we're moving forward to what we would consider a virtual on-site interview. We used to have folks come to a Google campus, whichever one was closest to you, and have you actually physically visit us and then sit with interviewers for the day. We are now doing that all virtually, of course. So it is typically, you could expect 4 more 45-minute interviews at that virtual on-site interview portion. And hopefully, after that, you're done with interviews. So it does depend on the job function, but for most roles at Google, we start on a generalized process where you're not actually even meeting with the team during the interview portion, but we save that for this team alignment, team matching process, which comes after the interviews, which is an interesting way to do it. But what it does is allows us the opportunity to make sure that we put the candidate first and make sure that it's a team that you'd be interested in. And it also gives us a lot of flexibility if a role fills before we're able to complete the process or extend an offer, then we can pivot to another role. So pros and cons for sure. But traditionally the process is initial phone interview, virtual on-site interview panel, then a team matching, team alignment process. And following that, hopefully if we're able to identify a great team for you, then it's the checks for an offer and extending an offer your way. So that is the like 3-minute condensed, which could take 10 months of time process. I know that our timeline, we say like it could be 6 to 8 weeks for a software engineering position. For other more niche roles, it could take 6 to 8 months, maybe shorter, maybe longer. So we do have, I know that Google has a reputation for being a little bit of a longer process, and I definitely recognize that that is the case. So let's see if there are some questions popping in. Advice, I'm just going through this chat first and then I'll pop over to the Q&A. Advice for non-techies wanting to get into Google. I think Darrell mentioned this too. Something I'd give advice for anyone actually is apply and apply often. So at Google, we have, I think, a limit of 3 applications per month that you can put in through our online portal. But like Darrell said, sometimes it's an external role that's really targeted for an internal transfer. Sometimes they might already have somebody in process, or they might have somebody with an offer out. So apply often. You can apply up to 3 roles per month, so go ahead and do that. Apply to any roles that are applicable to your background. And then for the external posting, what I do like to specifically call out as well is we look at the minimum qualifications, and we look I would say, my personal opinion, if you are meeting at least 80% of the minimum qualifications, then that's a targeted role. Not everything is applicable to everyone, and not everything is actually an MQ. So, for example, some of the roles say a bachelor's degree or 3 years of experience or equivalent experience. And as I had mentioned in the panel, I've worked with folks who are coming from a coding bootcamp who don't have any industry experience and don't have the degree, but yet they're still excellent coders, they're still excellent software engineers, and we bring them on board. So take the qualifications with a grain of salt, I guess would be my other advice. So apply often, and then leverage your networks too. You know, I don't know every single role that exists at Google, but I'm happy to help people get moving in the right direction. So now that you have my contact information, let me help if I can. Thank you for the plug to the Google Careers page. I was going to drop that in the larger chat, but as it goes. Anyway, if you fail an interview, how long do you have to wait to re-interview? This one does depend a little bit on the job role as well. So we typically, best practice software engineering interview, best practice for that, if it's the exact same role, we say 9 to 12 months before interviewing again. And the intention there is that you can take on different professional development opportunities to continue to grow your technical skills in that regard. If you are pivoting to a different role, they might have a different best practice for that specific job function. But for software engineering, the general outline is waiting 9 to 12 months before reapplying. And on that note as well, I do like to call out that there is no like one and done at Google. We know that oftentimes folks do have to apply and interview multiple times. So I always would encourage folks, if it's not the first time, maybe it's the second, maybe it's the third, maybe it's the fourth, and so on. So don't be discouraged if the first time it doesn't go the way that you had hoped or planned. Keep trying. All right. How can I get a job at Google with a coding certificate? So I think, like I said, that would, as long as you can meet the technical bar during the interviews. I don't know why I'm messing with my AirPods because there's no sound. Just like me in a vacuum, but it's a habit. A coding certificate is just as good if you are meeting the technical bars as a bachelor's degree. So really, it's having that technical knowledge and performing well in that technical phone interview would be the case for a software engineering type interview. So again, use the skills that you've had. Even it doesn't even have to be a certificate. It could be self-taught. You know, as long as you have those technical skills, it's really just a matter of performing well during the interviews. And if the first one doesn't go well, give it a second chance. Are there any programs for early career professionals and apprenticeships? So not my area of expertise, I will be 100% honest. I don't know for sure off the top of my head what all exists. I used to work in the intern space, but on the intern side, it did require that you were actively pursuing your education in that realm, in that area. So for early career, I am not sure if there are any specific programs other than the roles themselves that exist. So we do have various roles that are targeted specifically for early career folks. So I would say maybe try to find those. They're often called early career. University graduates are some of the keywords that you might find. And then there is another one that I'm blanking on because I've never supported the actual role itself, but we did launch an apprenticeship program this year. I have heard about it, but I don't have any actual firsthand knowledge of it. So I'm not sure what the requirements are, but I do know that it exists. And if it exists, there's probably information on the Google Careers page or somewhere else where you can find it. So apologies if I don't have all of the information on that one, but I don't know of any specific programs. But I do know that we have targeted early career professional roles, and we do have apprenticeships. I just am not 100% on what the uh, requirements are of that. My LinkedIn. Let's go see if I can't find that. Let me drop it myself. Um, let's see. Let's see. Let's go to myself. Do, do, do. On it. Bam. There's my LinkedIn. I hope that that's me. Feel free. Double check me if I'm wrong. No, it's me. I'm confident that that's me. Um, okay. Someone already dropped it. Okay. And my email is my first name, my last name at Google. So there you go. You've got it. Ticket to my inbox. And I generally, I'll tell everyone here, didn't want to say anything in front of Daryl, but I am better at my inbox than I am at LinkedIn. So no, it's just me. No shade towards LinkedIn or Microsoft, but do I believe the job market at Google is oversaturated? Oversaturated. Mm, no, I don't think so. I don't think that the job market is oversaturated because we have so many roles that we're hiring for. I had to give that one some thought. We have so many roles that we are hiring for that I believe that there is a role for folks who can demonstrate their abilities. So, like I had mentioned too, in terms of the process itself, if you have completed the virtual on-site interviews and the targeted role is filled, goes away, whatever the case may be, there should be far more opportunities to explore, to pivot within Google. So I hope no. Got my LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone. I should really capture. Um, yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's my email. And honestly, if you do email me, sending in a resume attachment might be a great idea. That way you can make sure that I have your information. Entry level jobs. I think I kind of touched on that too. Anything that says early career in the keyword is a great place to start looking. But yes, entry level jobs, of course. Um, Yes, 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 yes. I'm planning on doing Google career certificates for project management and IT support. Do recruiters and hiring managers look favorably at people with Google certificates? Yeah, honestly, I think kind of just back to that earlier point I made, as long as you can demonstrate that you have the skills required for the role, that's pretty much what they're looking for. So I don't necessarily know that a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, a certificate is a prescriptive one-shot deal to make sure that you're qualified or it's seen. I think, like I said, as long as you're demonstrating those skills, it kind of, I don't want to say it doesn't matter how you got there, but hopefully we're able to look at the skills themselves. Oh, a little bit more about me. Can you tell us a bit about your background? Of course. I started as in my career as a teacher with Teach for America. So I joined that after my university program had ended. I taught in a middle school. I was a special education teacher and a math teacher. I transitioned from middle school teaching to high school teaching, same subject matter. And then I was a high school guidance counselor as well for a few years. So I definitely had a career before Google. One of the connections I had made through teaching actually also ended up at Google, and that was my specific connection to Google. And that is how I even considered tech. I didn't think tech was a place for me. I didn't think that there was a role for me at Google. I think I had a misconception from the outside looking in that I needed to know how to code to work at Google. But I don't know how to code, and I didn't need that to get in. So I had my own misconceptions to kind of get over and work my way through. And that was how I got started at Google. And the specific teams that I've worked on within Google, I've been at Google for about 5+ years, 5 years and a couple months now. My first year and 3/4, I was what we call a temp, TBC, a temporary employee. So I basically just not full time. So I wasn't a salaried employee, and I converted from a temporary employee, that's what we call it, to a full time employee. Um, and throughout that time, I started on the intern team, like I said. I supported a hardware team for a little bit. I was on a technical intern diversity sourcing team. And then the role I'm on now, I'm a recruiter within our a greater diversity team. So that's me. That's my background. And I do love the work I do. Alrighty, let's see. Ooh, I like this question. So from Allison, any advice for pay negotiation during the interview and hiring process? Um, I I would say aim high. That's my number one tip. Always go for it. Do not undervalue yourself. Your skills are valuable, and you should be paid for them. So that is my number one, like, underlying, like, stick to your guns. Um, I'll speak from my personal experience. We are essentially the middle person recruiters between the compensation team and the candidate. My personal philosophy, it is not my money. I want people to be paid the absolute most that they can be paid. I don't get a kickback from Google if I save them money on someone's salary. So I want folks to be paid what they are owed, and what shows their value. So on that front, like, absolutely no shame in asking for what you deserve, what you expect. I hope that that's helpful. I think I'll leave it at that. I will absolutely go in after this is over. I think we have until 9 o'clock my time, noon, Eastern Standard Time, and I will go and I will hit the accept button, and I will look at my inbox, and I promise that I will do that immediately. Well, maybe I'll get coffee and then I'll do that. So um, give me a few more minutes. All right, question. I'm just scrolling through, making sure I don't miss anything. Is there hope at Google for people in the diaspora, say Africa, who hasn't left the shores of their country? So I, again, I'm not like a full expert on other roles. I am limited to North America applications. However, I do know that we are growing Google in terms of other countries that we're in. And I know that there are different offices popping up that are targeted either to open or that have opened. So I would say yes, absolutely. Be on the lookout for those roles. Um, some main languages used by software engineers. Any object-oriented programming language is what we focus on. So for the most part, we always encourage candidates to interview in the language that you feel the most comfortable and confident in, and where you are obviously the most technically sound. So that way you can put your best foot forward in terms of the technical interview. But for example, some of the ones I see most often are Java, JavaScript, C, C++, C Sharp, Python. Um, you do not need to code in Go to work at Google. I think that that's another misconception. So a little bit of the conversation earlier about meeting folks where they're at. Please use your most preferred coding language for any technical interviews. All right. I know that there are also questions over in the Q&A section, and I don't want to miss those either, but let me keep scrolling through. You all are very fast, and I am doing my best here. All right. If I get an AWS certificate cloud practitioner, Would I need to get certified with Google to work with Google? I don't necessarily think so, but I could be wrong. So I don't want to lead anyone astray. But again, as long as the technical skills are there, then we would have no issues bringing folks on board. So I don't think that you'd necessarily have to get an additional certificate as long as, like I said, you can demonstrate those technical skills. All right. Oops. When applying, is having referrals helpful? Um, I would blanket statement say yes, because it can't be hurtful. However, a little bit more of that conversation earlier too. Sometimes the roles are not available for external hire, so having a referral in that case, it wouldn't move the needle. But I would also say having a referral doesn't hurt. Join me from education to tech. Jump on in. Um, does it matter how long the candidate was in their previous role before applying? Is there a time period that is too short or too long? Um, so I will blanket say best practice is to spend at least 6 months in a role before applying for a new one. However, that's not necessarily always the case. I've definitely worked with folks who know after 2 months that this is not the place for them. And so there is definitely no requirements to be in a role, but any longer than you're comfortable. But that's generally speaking a best practice in like HR world, I suppose, is to spend at least 6 months in a role before transferring. However, again, like I said, that's not a hard rule. It's just a general best practice time frame. So we know that there are extenuating circumstances and would never hold that against anyone. Sometimes it does come up in conversations. So if you do have a circumstance where it's been a shorter period of time, be prepared to maybe have an answer or an explanation or some context if you're comfortable sharing. Again, do not have to share everything. If it's personal in nature, just say it's personal in nature. I had to transfer. Um, all right. Yeah. So I'm just like kind of reading and reviewing. Referrals are helpful. Like you've said, it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, of course, because if there are other folks in line for the role or if it was posted externally for an internal transfer, um, I don't know that having a referral would necessarily like do much in that instance, but it does help. In terms of tailoring a resume to making sure that you meet the minimum qualifications, I would say that that's probably a best practice just for any role, whether it's at Google or anywhere else. If you are looking at the role posting and it's asking for a requirement or it's asking for some skills that maybe you left off your resume that you do have because you didn't think it was necessary to have it on your like general resume, go ahead and tailor it and make sure it's included. But also, best practice, never lie. Never ever lie on your resume about saying that you have skills that you may not have. Not that anyone here would, but always best practice, best foot forward. Make sure your resume captures your skills. All right, I'm just scrolling through. Say if a person wanted to get their foot in the door, are there like help desk positions that you can apply for? Yes, at Google we do. We have positions that are helping Googlers with their IT, and then we also just generally have like other positions as well that you can apply for. So yeah, we have a lot of great opportunities just depending on what you're looking to do. I am trying to think of because I would just refer to them as the help desk. So now I'm trying to think of what the actual title would be. If I noodle on that and it comes to me, I will bring that one back up. With more than 10 years in tech, how do we pivot to cybersecurity? Not my area of expertise, going to be totally transparent, but I would say um, making sure that you have the qualifications and the job postings. Um, yeah. Can I freelance writing white papers? I don't know, is that a real question? Is that for me? Um, is that I'm not really sure if I can answer that. I have no idea. Um, oh, good. Here we go. I'm late to the party. Can you talk about the APM program and what a good candidate looks like and how to prepare? Well, the APM program. See, I don't have every role off the top of my head, but I do know that that is an associate product manager position, and it is targeted for early career slash an entry level position. I don't know much about the specifics of the actual interview process, but generally, always good advice is to look at those minimum qualifications, the preferred qualifications on the job posting, tailor your resume. If you're lacking a skill, pursue some development in that area to make sure that you're a great candidate for the role. Yeah, so this question, would there be any indication that an internal candidate is already being considered for a specific role when applying? Unfortunately, I don't think so. Um, yeah, I don't think that there would be any way to know. But I will say, generally speaking, I mean, I know that this topic has come up quite a bit, but for our postings externally, there is traditionally like an external posting that's maybe a little bit more specific, or I'm sorry, a little bit more general to its specific like internal posting. So, for example, I know externally we have positions that say software engineer three, United States, very broad, very general. But then internally, we can see, oh, this is a role on the YouTube team working on the back end and something in another specific area, or this is for a cloud apps role, working on this specific project and team. So the postings externally might be very broad and very general. And then internally, that's part of that team alignment process that I was referring to earlier, where then your recruiter would partner with you to target certain, whether it's teams, product areas, locations that align with your skills and interest to see if there is potential alignment there. Um, why do some job postings not reflect the deadline? That's a good question. Some of them are available just perennial or all the time. I don't know if that's the right word. Some postings, like I said, the software engineer three, United States. I feel like that's one that's probably going to just be available all the time because then we have these other more specific roles that kind of fall under them that become available throughout the year. So whether it's the YouTube team that's hiring, like I said, the ads team, the cloud team, we keep some of these like general postings just available all the time so that folks can apply. Cool down period. So best practice, cool down period if you had interviewed, if you're going for the same role, would be 9 to 12 months. Um, so I would say that's best practice, but it's by no means a hard timeline. If you've taken on a new course, a new certification, a new project, some technical learnings, you can always apply earlier than that. There is, like I said, the only real limit is the 3 applications per month that we try to hold people to. Okay, I am going to pop over to the Q&A tab because I don't want anyone to feel neglected. Oh, the can I freelance writing white papers? I'm not sure. I just don't know the answer to this. I don't know if that means like can you have that in addition to a Google job? I'm not sure. You would probably want to talk to someone like from legal because we do have certain disclaimers and things that we agree to when we take employment with Google. So I think if that's the question, and I think I'm not the person to talk to about that. I think that the answer would be to go through some of our trained professionals to answer that question. Can I apply to a new grad role if I'm a bootcamp grad? Yes. So I think the actual terminology that you might want to look for would be early career, and that should be the posting. However, sometimes I think it might say university graduate, but you can absolutely also use that role posting if you are looking for an entry level position from completing a boot camp. Next question in the Q&A section. Does having the Coursera UX certificate help with applying to a role? Um, I, I, I don't know that I can super confidently answer that. I think again, I just kind of divert to like if you're meeting the qualifications for the role and if you're showing your skills, then apply and demonstrate those skills during the application and interview process. What technical skills should I focus on? Is building full stack PWAs with Angular, RxJS enough, or do I need to understand the inner workings? So I would say technical skills that you should focus on. Question from Lex. Um, Coding, data structures, algorithms. Those are the topics and key areas for that initial interview that I had chatted about earlier. So any initial technical phone screen would be dependent upon like coding, data structures, algorithms. It could be like I'm not technical in nature, so I know I'm like off the top of my head, sometimes like binary trees come up, any object-oriented programming stuff, computer science fundamentals would be necessary for these initial interviews. As far as getting really granular in terms of skills, I think that that might be great when it comes to that team alignment process to see if there's a team that's working in something specific that you have a skill set in. But by no means um, would it be required for the initial interviewing. Oh, I think I'm going in reverse order. I think the oldest questions are at the bottom. Okay, which I answered. Okay, I scrolled all the way down to the bottom of the Q&A section. What part of Google did you work in first? Got that. I started in intern. Sent me a LinkedIn request. Great, thank you. I will absolutely action that. Do I recommend the certifications Google rolled out as a qualification towards a job at Google? Cannot hurt. Any of the certifications that Google has, I would say, could be helpful, but don't feel like you need to get every single thing. I don't know. Get the ones that are relevant to you, to what you want to do. Talked about referrals a little bit too. Never hurts to have a referral. By all means, if you have a connection, that's always great. Am I accepting mentees? I would love to, but I'm not. I wouldn't exactly call myself a tech person still. I don't know. Maybe that's my own. Maybe that's my own issue. I need to get to work through. I'd be happy to help in any way I can. So yeah, find me. And the difference between a cloud engineer and a cloud developer. I'm going to have to say that I'm not the best person to answer that question too, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm having a lot of those where I'm probably just not the best person for that question. Does having a referral increase your chances of your application being viewed? Well, the great news is everyone's application will be viewed by a human. So that is the myth I do like to bust, that we do have human beings actually reviewing resumes for roles. So in that regard, having a referral, again, doesn't hurt. It does not hurt. Besides software engineering, what other roles do I specifically recruit for? So I have hired into software right now at this point in my career. Software engineering is a big one, and then I also work with program managers and technical program managers. So I am well versed and can help folks with that. I've been doing that for about 2 years. So those are kind of the three job ladders that I personally have experience with. software engineering, program management, technical program management. Oh, great. Some of these are duplicates. So I am just skipping through them. What's the best way to get good at algorithms? So the background of the question was they got feedback regarding their algorithms to work on in terms of interviewing again. What's the best way to get that experience? So some of the websites that I have heard are helpful in terms of prepping for interviews or anything that simulate the mock interview process. So I know that there's interviewing.io is a website that does just that, the mock interview type design. Leet Code, HackerRank, um, Code. There's another one off right on the tip of my tongue. Code something, code something. I wanted to say Code Umbrella, but I don't think that that's right. But there are a lot of other great websites out there where you can practice some of those technical skills that maybe they mentioned that you'd want to work on. So, and I lost the question. I lost where I was. Here we go. And when it comes to product management roles at Google, are new transitions considered, especially coming from a non-tech background? I don't have a ton of experience in product management since that's one of the roles that's not the big three that I work on. But I would say, again, generally speaking, if you have the skills, if you have the qualifications for the role, then coming from a non-tech background would not be a problem. Um, so yes, new transitions would be considered for any role. In terms of timing, does Google typically hire more at the beginning of the year? And if there is some bias, how does that apply to more niche roles that aren't highly technical? So I think generally speaking, we are kind of hiring constantly, which is great. So like I said, those really broad umbrella roles are available year round. So definitely can always be applying. As far as the niche, very specific roles, I would say that they probably become available when there's a business need, and then once they're filled, are not available. So I don't know that time of year has much to do with that more so than business need. So in terms of those, I would say if it's a really specific role, if it's a really niche role, if it's a non-technical role that's also niche, it would just be based on business need. Locations. Can I apply for a remote role from another geographical region? So, yes, in terms of our location policy right now, we are all working virtually. The intended date to return to the office for us was January 10th on a hybrid work week. So 3 days in the office and 2 days at home, or 2 days from anywhere. It doesn't have to be home. So that was the initial philosophy, but we are seeing an increase in full remote roles, which is great for candidates who don't want to relocate to one of the areas that we have an office or where the office would be. So there are remote roles becoming available. I think that the stipulation for a remote role is that depending on where you say you are remote, then that's where you're expected to be remote. So, for example, if you say, I am in California and I want to remain remote, well, then you just need to be like still in California because of taxes, pay, etc. So I think that that's the stipulation I would make for remote roles. All right. Basically, an employment gap. So, graduated, stopped working to take care of family. Um, that would not be a problem. Like I had mentioned earlier too, in terms of like shorter terms in a role or an extended employment gap, we know that things happen. We will not hold that against folks. So please apply. As someone who has completed a boot camp, what are some ways I can stand out a bit more? I would just say making sure that those skills that you learned during that boot camp are on your resume, are evident, that you have made sure to highlight what you've learned during that boot camp time. Um, just make sure that things are on your resume. Um, because like I said, every resume is reviewed by an actual human being. Can you reach out to me? You can reach out to me for any role. Generally speaking, if I know how to help, I will. If it's a role that I have zero experience in, I am not afraid to tell you that I do not have the experience. I'm not afraid to be transparent and say I just don't know. But for our program manager roles, actually within Google, we have kind of two sides of the house. So we do have technical program manager roles and non-technical program manager roles. So even within like the recruitment world that I sit in within Google, we have program managers who assist us with like developing strategy, looking at data for our job functions. So we have program managers everywhere, and definitely if I can help, I would love to. Um, All right, real specific question based in Tokyo, just applied for a role. Is it possible to chat one-on-one? I honestly do not know how to do that. But I do have a stop at 9 a.m. my time, so that's noon. But I would absolutely love to follow up, if not today, another day with anyone. Um, so email is probably the best way to reach me for that. Any resources, learning more about data structures, algorithms. I think I touched on that too. I mean, I would look at some of those websites, LeetCode, HackerRank, etc., to practice those technical skills. Is Google still planning on being virtual? Is it feasible to apply for a role out of state? So if Google has more applicable roles in New York City versus DC, would it be feasible? Yes, absolutely. So as far as I know, we are going to be virtual for the time being. They lifted the January 10th return to office date and they haven't given us a new one. So as far as I know, we are virtual for the time being. And as far as the like relocation goes, for transferring from one site to another, if that is the case, if you accept a role in New York City, but you are living in DC, they have asked that you relocate before your intended start date. And we do have relocation services as well to assist. So whether it's cash or this structure to relocate, um, you can use that with your relocation specialist within Google. So absolutely, you can apply for roles in any location. Um, Definitely. What are some perks for working virtually at Google? Well, I get to hang out with my sweet pets and my spouse. So I enjoy working virtually. I also enjoyed going to the office though. So I just don't miss the commute. So that's the thing I don't miss at all. So like I had shared, I have a desk in the Los Angeles office. And so that traffic can be pretty miserable. I also worked in the Bay Area. That traffic was terrible too. So I do not miss the commute. But um, I do enjoy my coworkers. I do enjoy the collaborative nature of being in the office, but it is possible to get that still through pings, emails, um, Google Meet, getting together with folks. So here we go. Let's see. Don't let the qualifications for degrees stop you from applying. Do not anonymous. If that's another myth buster, like I said, those qualifications are listed, and then I know that the language is on the page that says or equivalent practical experience, something like that, or equivalent experience, or the experience. So a boot camp is the experience that would equate to a degree. So there you go. Certain quarters of the year where the workload increases significantly. I don't know that there are times of increase, but I do know that this time of the year tends to be kind of a slower time just given that like folks start taking more of their time off. But what's great about Google is we do not have to use our vacation days before the end of the calendar year. We can roll them over. So we accrue 15 vacation days throughout the year, incrementally through our paychecks. And so we accrue our time, but there is no, like, I know for other companies, industries where, you have the 2 weeks and you have to use them that calendar year or you lose them. We do not. We roll over up to a 300-hour vacation time. So you can accrue quite a bit of vacation time if you're not using it. I don't know how I got on that topic other than just to say this time of year does tend to be a little bit on the slower side, because people do tend to take vacation even though there is no requirement to take your vacation time. Okay. I think I answered that question. These are some of the ones I got into because they were at the top when I first came in. So let me keep scrolling. Is there a veterans program at Google? So there is a veterans ERG, and we do very much value folks from not non-traditionally represented in tech groups. So veterans, persons with disabilities, Latinx, Black plus talent, LGBTQ women. Basically, there is no like targeted program that I would say, but if you do take a look at the careers page and then do some searching around, there might be certain workshops to take advantage of if you externally look for that. So that's what I would say about those and any of the ERGs. What gets me excited about working at Google? Are any 2 days the same? No, I get to talk to great people every day, different people each day. So in that regard, I don't have any 2 days that look the same, which is great for me. I enjoy that aspect of my work. And I think what gets me excited about working at Google is the people. So the connections I make both externally and internally, I've always enjoyed working with people. And so that is pretty much what keeps me going. I do enjoy the human connection bit of the job. What common mistakes do I see interviewees make during their interviews? That's a great question. So I think there are some hurdles to learn before approaching interviews with Google. And across the board, I don't want to be too like technically focused for software engineering, but generally speaking, we are looking for communication skills and problem solving across any role, whether it's recruitment, software engineering, anything. So problem solving skills are key. And part of the way to demonstrate your problem solving skills is talking out loud through your thinking process. So that can be difficult to practice and or just kind of get used to. So that's something that I would say if you are considering applying or interviewing, work on talking through even things that you don't think anyone would want to know about. Talk through it. So that would be one tip for that. Gaining experience for entry level software engineering. I think again that would be like any of the websites or anywhere where you can practice. If you have anyone else in your cohort that you can practice with, that's always helpful. I also don't have it. So the next question is about my background, being a teacher and then getting into HR. So you don't have an HR degree, would love to pivot. I didn't either. My advice to you, think about transferable skills. So that goes kind of for anyone. So it doesn't have to necessarily be like experience in HR, but what transferable skills do you have that can demonstrate that you would be capable in that role function? What are some ways to engage recruiters that's professional and genuine without being weird? It's not just Google. I That's great. I love it, and I don't think that that is weird at all. I think generally speaking, people use LinkedIn a lot um, to engage with recruiters, just dropping a note. I've also shared my email address, so if it's Google specifically, you can email me your resume, say hello, introduce yourself. But I think that that is a great way. Another great way too to engage with recruiters, if if LinkedIn is working, is just sending a note along with your resume. That's always helpful. All right, anonymous. Some people felt unsupported and disposable by their employers throughout the pandemic. Do I feel supported by my company during this time? If yes, has that helped you be a better recruiter? That's a great question. I'm really sorry to hear, and I know that that's the case that people have not felt valued at their companies. I myself have. Um, I can only speak from my own personal experience at Google. I have great leaders, I have great managers, and a great managerial chain. So I feel very fortunate in the team that I am on that I get to work with and for. So I have felt supported. I think another thing, just like outside of my own specific team dynamics, that Google did during the pandemic was they offered 12 weeks of carers leave. So CARER, carers leave to take if you needed to be there for someone, whether it's a parent, a family member, a child. So that's one way I think that Google kind of showed up for everyone, regardless of what team you were specifically on, was offering that carers leave and benefit. And I know we only have 2 minutes left, so I do want to make sure. Do closed internships open up in the springtime? Um, I don't as far as the intern roles, I'm not in that space anymore, but I do know that they are time specific because they open the roles to recruit and hire the interns for the time that they they have available. So for example, like the spring summer internship is available, then there's like a fall and winter, depending on when uh, students have the time to devote to the internship. So I do know that that element is probably time specific. Okay, alrighty. Being self-taught developer, how can I prove the skills I have on my resume? I think through like projects, GitHub is another big one too. So if you have a link to GitHub or can list out any projects that you've done, um, that's a great way to demonstrate on your resume. Will students be recruited from this event for an internship? I do not know. I do not know that. Um, Does Google ever find challenges filling certain positions due to less applicants? I'm sure. I mean, I feel like that's probably the case if it's a super niche, very specific role. But I can tell you that for candidates that I have worked with, I generally am able to find great roles for them and get people successfully hired to Google. So hopefully that's the case. Um, and I know we're at time, but I remember missing one question at the bottom of the other chat that was about the timeline of the process. So, as far as timing goes, we generally say 6 to 8 weeks for like our technical role, software engineering. But just depending on the role that you're on, sometimes it can take much longer than that. In that team alignment process, it can take 6 months, could take 8 months. For the program and technical program manager roles that I have been supporting, it does also depend on location. So that can be a factor in terms of the length of time. So, in terms of the length of time to kind of start an application and hopefully get to the offer stage, it could take anywhere, like I said, from 6 to 8 weeks to 6 to 8 months, and any variety in between. I would always say, ask your recruiter. And if you have any timing pressures, be sure to mention that to your recruiter so that they know. It's not that anyone's ever stalling, but sometimes having that information is helpful to go back to other stakeholders and say, hey, I need you to make a decision now. Like we're going to lose this person to this company. So yes or no. And so I know we're over time. You all have been so wonderful. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you for having me. And thank you for bearing with me through any of my technical glitches. I've already shared my contact information. I'm committed to going to LinkedIn and going through these requests and adding folks. And please, my door is open. Would love to, if I can't work with you personally at Google, I would love to help you in your career quest. So, on that note, thank you again for your time. I'm going to hit the leave button, which I think will exit me from this. So, if I've lost any of your questions or you have follow up, please reach out. And I would love to be connected with you all.